So in today's class, we are going to discuss consumer rights and MV Act, mainly the product law for liability which comes under the ambit of MV Act. So coming on to consumer rights. Firstly, we can see the introduction. So basically what is mean by consumer protection? So consumer protection is actually Consumer Protection Act is mainly established to protect the interest of the consumers. Yes, from the name itself it is easily we can identify for this purpose mainly the Consumer Protection Act is enacted. Yes, this itself is saying in here also, that is, consumer law protects the rights of buyers against unfair trade practices. It ensures fair competition and accurate in the UGC paper. So here firstly, so remember that firstly who is a consumer, we saw who is a consumer and the section dealing with consumer, and next we can see the term complainant. So section 2 clause 5 of the act mainly deals with complainant. Okay, section 2 clause 5 of the Consumer Protection Act mainly deals with complainant. Who is a complainant? We can see a consumer to whom goods are sold or delivered, promised to be supplied, or services provided or agreed to be provided. So here complainant itself is the consumer. To a consumer, when the seller agrees with the consumer that he would sell or he would deliver any product or services in any time. There can be a time period, sometimes in this particular date or this particular time I will deliver so and so service, or I will deliver so and so goods. If any seller or if any person who delivers any services agree with the consumer, so such persons are mainly considered as complainant. So section 2 clause 5 of the Consumer Protection Act mainly deals with complainant. Mainly, who is a complainant? A complainant is mainly a consumer itself, a complainant to whom goods are sold or delivered, promised to be supplied, or services provided or agreed to be provided. Such persons are considered as complainant. And another one important point is any voluntary consumer association registered under any law, if any voluntary consumer, a group of voluntary a group of voluntary consumers, or any consumer association is registered under any law, such groups are also considered as complainant. Okay. And another one or more consumers with the same interest. If one consumer, that we can see later, that when we discuss more deeply with this topic, we can see that meaning. One or more considers with the same interest. So such group of people are also considered as complainants. So in the case of a death, their legal hire or representative is considered as complainant. So here there can be a doubt how a legal hire can be a consumer. So for example, if we say that if a person buys any good or avail any services from one another, and after availing the services he actually dies, then what happened? Then after that, when it came to the knowledge, there occurs some deficiency in this product or services. So now the original consumer has died. Then what happens? The legal heir, his his daughter or his son or his wife uh, can seek can give complaint to the consumer commission. So this is mainly mean by that. That is, in case of death of a consumer, their legal hire or representative is considered as complainant. So this is mainly the definition of complainant. What is who is complainant? Section 2 clause 5 of the Consumer Protection Act mainly deals with complainant. Who is a complainant? A complainant is mainly a consumer itself. So a consumer to whom goods are sold or delivered, or promised to be supplied, or services provided or agreed to be provided, such persons are considered as complainant. And another one another one point we have seen in with respect to complainant is any voluntary consumer association registered under any law. So that association or that group of consumer is also considered as consumer. Another one point what we have seen is one or more consumers with the same interest is also considered as consumer. Then if any of the consumer dies, who can be the complainant? The legal heir or representative can give complaint to the consumer commission if there occurs any deficiency in services. Okay, so this is mainly meant by complainant. Another one definition is e-commerce. What is e-commerce? Okay, so e-commerce is actually came came after the enactment of 2019 Consumer Protection Act. So e-commerce mainly means the section 2 clause 16 of the Consumer Protection Act mainly deals with e-commerce. We can see what is e-commerce. So section 2 clause 16 defines e-commerce as buying or selling goods or services including digital products over digital or electronic networks. This definition acknowledges the massive shift toward online shopping and service provision in India's consumer landscape. So, according to section 2 clause 16 of the Consumer Protection Act 2019, according to this section, what does mainly mean by e-commerce platform? In simple words, e-commerce platform mainly means buying and selling of products through online platform. So that is mainly the meaning of e-commerce platform. Okay. And also, so mainly this main provision, e-commerce provision, uh, uh, added as per added in 2019, or came to this particular act in 2019, Consumer Protection Amendment Act. Mainly this particular section, that is e-commerce section, came to this act. So that is, e-commerce is mainly defined in section 2 clause 16 of this 2 clause 16 of the Consumer Protection Act. So mainly what is meant by e-commerce? In simple words we saw, that is buying and selling of products through online media. So this is actually the simple definition of e-commerce. Okay. That is, here it is clearly mentioned that buying or selling goods or services, including digital products, over digital or electronic networks. So we saw that. Now another one definition we can see, that is unfair trade practices. So why we are discussing this definition is mainly because there is a chance of asking, so what is meant by consumer, under which section consumer is explained. So the questions can be asked. So always remember this section. Another one important definition that we can see is unfair trade practice. So unfair trade practice is mainly defined in unfair trade practice is mainly defined in section 2 clause 47 of the Consumer Protection Act. So when we say about unfair trade practices, here clear section 2 clause 47 clearly defines about unfair trade practices. So unfair trade practices is a trade practice that adopts, always remember that term, that adopts deceptive methods or unfair or deceptive practices for promoting the sale, use or supply of any goods or services. Okay. So mainly unfair trade practice mainly means what? That is using unfair practices or using deceptive method of practices for the sale, use or supply of goods or services. That is the main definition of unfair trade practices. Now we can see some of the unfair trade practices, or what constitutes unfair trade practices. So here it is clearly states that the definition includes false representation, misleading advertisement of misleading advertisement, next false offers, bargains, non-compliance with standards, then hoarding or destruction of goods, spurious goods and services. So this is mainly, these are some of the unfair trade practices. So here what is meant by false representation? That is, if we order a product and we got, and when the product has delivered we got the wrong product. So this is mainly mean by the false representation. And another one, misleading advertisement mainly means what? For example, if there is one advertisement that if we consume so and so, or if we use this particular cream, we can become fair, or if you, if this, or with respect to, cream, or with respect to any body lotions, if any of the people, if any of the persons circulate this type of advertisement and it actually creates harm to the consumers, then such advertisement all considered as the misleading advertisements. The non-compliance with standards means what? So in most of the cases, when we buy any product, the package, in the package itself, here there is some, what, there is some noting that this particular product, is having or this particular product meets this sort of standard. Mainly it is clearly mentioned. So after using it, we came across that it lacked this point of standard, we can actually file complaint. So this is mainly mean that non-compliance with standards. Hoarding or destruction of goods mainly means what? So from the name itself we can understand hoarding or destruction of goods mainly means what? That means if we buy any packaged item, mainly any packaged food, or mainly the packaged food, and after buying the product, we understood that the product, it actually what the goods are the packaged foods are full spoiled. After buying, we came across with that so this is mainly means that hoarding or destruction of goods. That is, when we buy any product, so after buying the product, we came across to the knowledge that the product has been spoiled. Okay, so then what happens? So in such circumstances, we can actually file complaint to Consumer Commission. Spurious goods and services means that fake providing fake services, or so if any so this all things are happening day to day. Right. So this is actually spurious goods and services means providing fake services, or delivering fake goods, etc. So this is meant by spurious goods and services. So we saw the definition of unfair trade practices and uh, some, some of the unfair trade practices. So mainly unfair trade practice is mainly described in section 2 clause 47 of the Consumer Protection Act 2019, and we saw some of the unfair trade practices also. Next we can see consumer rights. That is, actually, the Consumer Protection Act mainly guarantees six major consumer rights. And the consumer rights, this consumer right is mainly described in section 2 clause 9 of the Consumer Protection Act 2019. So remember that consumer rights, actually Consumer Protection Act 2019 mainly guarantees six major consumer rights. Section 2 clause 9 of the act mainly gives us the six major rights. Now we can see each rights. First right is right to safety. So what does right to safety means? Right to safety means, we can see, protection against goods and services hazardous to life and property. Protection against goods and services hazardous to life and property ensures safety in products like electrical appliances, food and medicines. And here also one example is given, that is faulty pressure cooker explosion. So if we actually right to say safety mainly means that, so in the case of medicines or in the case of any products, so let's say about medicine, and if we consume any medicine, in that medicine it is clearly says that this particular medicine is harm, or the children under 3 years of age, or the children under 5 years of age cannot consume this particular medicine. And if it is clear, if it is not clearly mentioned, and if any of the child has consumed that medicine, then what happens? So there can the cause of death, there can occurs death. So in such a case, what happen? We can, here it is actually not here the product itself, or the manufacturers are not giving us the exact information, right? So if there occurs any harmful activities, or if there occurs any harmful things by using any product or by consuming any product, and as a result of that harm, any injury has been happened, then what happen? We can file consumer complaint. So this itself mainly says in right to safety, that is protection against goods and services hazardous to life and property, ensure safety in products like electrical appliances, foods and medicines. Example, here one, if we bought a pressure cooker, then if it occurs sudden explosion, what happens? There can occur injury. So if any circumstances happen like that, we can actually file consumer complaint to the Consumer Commission. So this is the first consumer right, that is consumer safety. Another consumer right is right to be informed. That is, consumer must be informed about quality, quantity, potency, purity, standard and price. Prevents unfair trade practices. Example, food labels showing expiry dates and ingredients. Okay, so right to be informed mainly means that the consumers, as a consumer, it is our right to to understand about the product's quality, quantity, potency, purity, standard, and price. So it is our right and our duty. So if we buy any products, so from that package itself, it have to be clearly mentioned about its quality, and especially the expiry date, all it have to be clearly written. Why why right to be informed has been added to this act? It is mainly added to prevent unfair trade practices. And also here one example is given, that is food labels showing expiry dates and ingredients. So this is the example of right to be informed. Okay. Another one right that consumer protection has mainly guarantees us is the right to choose. That is freedom to select from a variety of goods or services at competitive price, prevents monopolies and coercive sales practice. Example, not being forced to buy a combo product. So right to choose. Here what does right to choose means? As a consumers, it is we have the right to buy the product. No one can force us to buy any sort of product. If so, and also from a large number of goods or from a variety of goods, we have the freedom to select the good that what we want, and no one can force us to choose that product or to buy that product. So so the consumers have the freedom to select from a variety of goods or services at competitive prices. And why right to choose has been added to this act? It actually prevents monopolies and coercive tactics. And here also one example is given, that is if any shop has been forcing consumers to buy combo product, we have no right to, that means we it is our discretion to buy what product. As after hearing, or after if any of the manufacturers or if any of the sellers forced us to buy any combo product, we can deny that. So this is actually mainly mean by right to choose. Next is right to heard. So this is another one, right to be heard. So this means that consumers have the right to be heard and represented in legal forums. Grievances must be addressed by appropriate authority. Example, filing a complaint in the Consumer Commission. So right to be heard means that after, if we have any deficiency with our product or with our services, then what we will do? We'll actually file a complaint to the Consumer Commission. And as a consumers, as a consumers, we can represent legal forums. So this is mainly meant by right to be heard. And grievances must be addressed by appropriate authorities. That is, appropriate authorities have to hear the matter. And here the example is that is filing a complaint in the Consumer Commission. So this is mainly meant by right to be heard. Another one is right to seek redressal. So right to obtain compensation or remedy for defective goods or deficient services. Redressal agencies, district, state, and national commissions. Example, getting refund or replacement for a defective for a defective mobile phone. Here, right to seek redressal means that we have we have obtained a product or we bought a product. So after using it, we understood that this particular product have this defect. Then what happened? We can actually claim compensation. So this is a right to we can actually claim compensation from the uh, redressal agencies. So here, right to obtain compensation or remedy for defective goods or deficient services. Redressal agencies are mainly district, state, and national commissions. Example, getting refund or replacement for a defective mobile phone. Another one, another one consumer right is right to consumer education. Okay. Right to consumer education mainly means what? Right to acquire knowledge about consumer rights and responsibilities, promote awareness through campaigns, encourages responsible consumer behavior. So, from this, from now we are actually discussing about the different rights that a consumer have. So here itself, so according to right to consumer education, this clearly states that right to acquire knowledge about consumer rights and responsibilities. So as a consumer, the consumer have all the right to what to acquire knowledge and to acquire knowledge about the consumer rights and to understand consumer rights and what are the responsibilities of the consumer. So consumer have all the rights, right to what to gain the to understand the rights and responsibilities of the consumer. And why consumer education is considered as a right? Because it actually promotes awareness through campaigns. So nowadays also most of the consumers are not aware of their consumer rights, and so this act actually promotes awareness through campaigns, encourage responsible consumer behavior. So these are the main rights of the consumer. Okay, so we have seen mainly 6 rights. Section 2 clause 9 of the Consumer Protection Act mainly deals with consumer rights, and we have seen 6 consumer rights. First we saw right to safety. Right to safety means what? Protection against goods and services hazardous to life and hazardous to life and property. And why this right to safety has been added to 2019 Consumer Protection Act? Because it ensures safety in products like uh, safety in products like electrical appliances, food and medicines. And also we saw an example. And another one right that we saw is a right to be informed. That is, consumers have to be clearly informed about the product's quality, quantity, potency, purity, standard and price. And also it actually prevent unfair trade practices. And we saw another one example, that is food label showing expiry date and ingredients. Okay, so next right we have discussed is right to choose, which means what? Which means that the consumers, they have the right or they have the freedom to choose the product what they wanted from a variety of goods, prevent monopolies and coercive tactics. Example, not being forced to buy a combo product. So this is mainly mean by right to choose. Another one right is right to be heard. That is, consumers have the right to be heard and represented in legal forums. Grievances must be addressed by appropriate authorities. And we saw example, that is filing a complaint in the consumer commission. So this is right to heard. And we saw another right, that is right to seek redressal, means right to obtain compensation or remedy for defective goods or services. So right to obtain compensation or remedy for the goods that they have availed, and after availing the services they have the consumer have been understood that the product or the services is defective, then what happen? The consumer can actually obtain compensation or remedy. And the redressal agencies are, there is district consumer commission, state consumer commission and national consumer commissions. And also we saw an example, that is mainly what, getting refund or replacement for a defective mobile phone. This is the example that we have seen. And another one right is right to consumer education, which means what? Right to be, as a consumer, the consumers have the right to understand, right to know about the consumer's duty and the responsibilities. As a consumer, it is his right to know about his duty and responsibility. And it actually promotes awareness through campaigns, encourages responsible consumer behavior. So these are the 6 consumer rights. Now we can see consumer commission. So consumer commission. The Act establishes a three-tier system for redressing consumer grievances. These are quasi-judicial bodies that ensure fair settlement consumer disputes. So mainly there are 3 levels of consumer commission, that is district, state and National Commission. So Consumer Commission, we all know that we after what when we understood that the so and so product having particular any deficiency in service or any deficiency in the product, then what we have, then what we will do, we actually files complaint. We actually files complaint in Consumer Commission. Mainly there are three levels of Consumer Commission, that is district, state and national commissions. So first we can say district consumer dispute District Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission. So this commission is mainly established by state government jurisdiction, value of goods or services up to 50 lakhs, and now its composition is president. A president is actually a person who is or has been a district judge, and members, there should be at least 2 members, which includes one woman, and appeal to the state commission within 45 days. So when we say about district consumer dispute redressal commission, this particular commission is mainly established by state government. Okay, and its jurisdiction is the product or services, the goods or services should have the value up to rupees 50 lakh. So such cases are only entertained by district consumer commission. Now, when we say about composition, president, there is a president and members. And president is mainly the person who is or has been a district judge. And there is at least 2 members, including one woman. So if when the district consumer commission has passed any order and the consumer is not satisfied, or the consumer is aggrieved by that order, then what the consumer can do, the consumer can file an appeal to the state commission within 45 days, that is after getting order from the district consumer commission. Within 45 days itself, the appeal has to be given to state consumer commission. Okay, now we can see state consumer commission, state consumer dispute redressal commission, and this commission is also established by state government jurisdiction, value of goods or services above 50 lakh and up to rupees 2 crore. Composition, president, a person who is or has been a high court judge. Members at least 4, including one woman. Appeal to the National Commission within 30 days. So State Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission. So this is mainly established by state government, and the jurisdiction is the product of the services should have above 50 lakh and up to rupees 2 crore. So uh, this is a jurisdiction. And when we say about composition, here the president is a person who is or has been a high court judge. When we say about district commission, what the difference is, the president uh, president have to be a district judge, but in the case of state consumer dispute redressal commission, the president has been a high court judge, and the members, there should be 4 members, and which includes one woman. And if the order is not satisfied to the consumer, or the consumer is agreed with the order of the state consumer dispute redressal commission, then he can actually file appeal to the National Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission within 30 days. So always remember, in the case of district consumer commission, what happens, within 45 days after getting the order, within 45 days that we have to give complaint, we have to give appeal to the state consumer commission. Then in the case of state consumer commission, if we are agreed with the order, we can go for appeal to the National Consumer Dispute Commission within 30 days. So this is the main difference. Okay, next is National Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission, and this particular commission is mainly established by central government. So District Consumer Commission and the State Consumer Commission is mainly established by state government. So when we say about National Commission, National Consumer Commission, it is established by central government. and the jurisdiction is value of goods or services above 2 crore. Composition is there should be a president who has been, who is or has been a Supreme Court judge. Members, at least 4 members, including 1 woman. Appeal to the Supreme Court within 30 days. So, National Consumer Commission is mainly established by central government, and the jurisdiction is the product or the services should have the value uh, above 2 crore. Here, the composition is president. President is actually a person who is or has been the Supreme Court judge. Members, there should be at least 4 members, which includes a woman, appeal. So if any of the person is agreed with the order of the National Consumer Dispute Redressal Commission, he can actually go for appeal. Where? In Supreme Court. In Supreme Court, he can go for appeal within 30 days. So these are the things that we saw today, that is Consumer Commission. So we can once again we can revise it. Firstly, we saw the introduction. We understood that consumer protection law is mainly established to protect the interest of the consumer. So this is mainly the definition of the Consumer Protection Act. And after that, what we saw, we actually saw the main legislation in India, that is Consumer Protection Act 2019. So now we are following Consumer Protection Act 2019, and this particular act is mainly replaced the 1986 Consumer Protection Act. Okay. And after that, we have seen some of the definition. Firstly, we saw the definition of the consumer. Under Section 2 Clause 7 of the Consumer Protection Act, mainly deals with the definition of the consumer. So, mainly, in our understanding, mainly who is a consumer? When a person buy any goods or avail any services from another person, such person is mainly considered as consumer. So here the same thing is explained, that is buys goods or hires or avails services for consideration. It can be paid, promised or partly paid, and it includes any user or beneficiary of such goods or services with the approval of the buyer, and it does not include a person obtaining goods for resale or for commercial purposes. Such persons are not comes under the ambit of the consumer. Then after that, we have seen the definition of complainant. So where the complaint is described, Section 2 Clause 5. So consumer is, so we can sometimes there occurs the confusion, that is consumer is mainly defined in Section 2 Clause 7, whereas complainant is defined in Section 2 Clause 5. Okay, so then who is complainant? In simple words, a complainant is mainly the consumer, and a consumer to whom goods are sold or delivered, promised to be supplied, or services provided or agreed to be provided. Such person is considered as complainant. And and any voluntary consumer association registered under any law is also considered as complainant. One or more consumers with the same interest is also considered as complainant. So what happened in the case of death of a consumer? In the case of a death of the consumer, his legal heir or representative is considered as the consumer. So these are the things we discussed about complainant. Then after the complainant, we have seen e-commerce, the definition of e-commerce. Section 2 Clause 16 of the Consumer Protection Act 2019. Or remember, Section 2 Clause 16 of the Consumer Protection Act 2019 mainly deals with e-commerce platform. Then what is meant by e-commerce? In simple term, e-commerce means buying and selling of products through e-commerce, through online medium or through online platform. So that is mainly considered as e-commerce. Then after that, we have seen unfair trade practices. Here Section 2 Clause 47 mainly deals with unfair trade practices. Unfair trade practices is using deceptive methods or unfair or deceptive practices for promoting the sale, use or supply of any goods or services. So this is mainly considered as unfair trade practices, and we have seen some of the unfair trade practices also, which is false representation, misleading advertisements, bargains, non-compliance with standards, holding or destruction of goods, spurious goods and services. So these things are mainly considered as unfair trade practices. And after that, we have seen what consumer rights. So section 2 clause 9 of the act mainly deals with consumer rights, and we saw six consumer rights, that is right to safety, right to be informed, right to choose, right to be heard. So these are the six consumer rights that we have seen. And after that we saw right to be heard, right to seek redressal, right to consumer education. So these are the six consumer rights that we have seen. After that, we saw consumer commissions. Mainly, there are three levels of consumer commissions. Okay, there is district level consumer commission, state level consumer commission, and national level consumer commission. So before going into consumer, I have not. So when we say about right to safety, always remember that protection against goods and services protection against goods and services which is hazardous to life and property. So this is mainly meant by right to safety. And right to be informed means what? As a consumer, we have all the right to understand the quality, quantity, potency, purity, standard, and price of the product that we buy, and why this right has been established to prevent unfair trade practices. And another one right we saw is right to choose. So it is the right of the consumer to choose the product. No any seller or no any manufacturer cannot compel a consumer to buy an item. Okay, so this actually prevents monopolies and coercive sales tactics. Then after that we saw right to be heard. Right to be heard mainly means what? As a consumer, the consumer have all the right and to know his right, and also as a consumer have the right to heard and represent in legal forums. So grievances must be addressed by appropriate authorities, example filing complaint in the consumer commission. And right to seek redressal mainly means that right to obtain compensation or remedy for defective goods or deficient services. And there are mainly three redressal agencies we saw that. Then which is district, state, and national commissions. Then right to consumer education. Right to consumer education means mainly means what? As a consumer have all the right to understand his duties and responsibilities, and it also creates awareness, and it encourages a responsible consumer behavior. Then after the rights we saw consumer commissions. Mainly there are three sets of or three tier of consumer commission: district level consumer commission, state level consumer commission, and national level consumer commission. So district level consumer dispute redressal commission is mainly established by the central government, and the jurisdiction is the products, the value of goods or services up to 50 lakh. And the composition is president. President is a person who has been a district judge, and the members includes at least two members, including one woman. And if the consumer is agreed by the order of the state consumer commission, he can actually file appeal to the state commission within 45 days. Then coming on to state consumer dispute redressal commission, it is actually established by state government, and the jurisdiction is value of the goods or services which is above 50 lakh and less than 2 crore. This is a jurisdiction, and the composition is president and members. President, a person who is or has been the high court judge. Members, there should be at least 4 members, including one woman. And appeal can be given to national commission, which is within the 30 days. Okay, then after that we saw national consumer dispute redressal commission, and this particular commission is mainly established by central government, and the jurisdiction is value of the goods or services which exceeds 2 crore, and the composition is president. President is actually a person who is or has been the Supreme Court judge. Members, there should be 4 members, at least there should be 4 members, including one woman, and the appeal can also be given to where Supreme Court within 30 days of the order. So these are the Consumer Protection Act that we have discussed. Now we can see Motor Vehicle Act. So this is also one of the important topic that we can, that is that the net syllabus is mainly prescribed. Motor Vehicles Act. Now coming on to Motor Vehicles Act, firstly we can see the introduction of Motor Vehicles Act. So, the Motor Vehicles Act 1988 regulates all aspects of road transport vehicles in India. It replaced the Motor Vehicles Act 1939. Now we are following Motor Vehicles Act 1988. Always remember Motor Vehicles Act 1988 we are following now, and this particular act actually replaced Motor Vehicle Act 1939. Okay. So, Motor Vehicle Act 1988 regulates all aspects of road transport vehicles in India. It replaced Motor Vehicles Act 1939, and we all know the objective of Motor Vehicles Act, right? Objectives mainly to ensure road safety, control traffic, and protect the rights of road users. So to ensure road safety, to control traffic, and to protect the rights of the road users, mainly this act has been established. Now we can see some of the important definition dealing with the Motor Vehicles Act. So why we are discussing, why the main reason to discuss the definition is the questions can be asked after defining the, sometimes after defining a particular term, the option is also given, which section. So some of the key definition only we are discussing today. So first one is motor vehicle. So motor vehicle is the term that mainly motor vehicles is actually discussing in section 2 clause 28 of the Motor Vehicles Act 1980. Remember always this motor vehicle, section 2 clause 28 of the Motor Vehicles Act 1980 deals with motor vehicle, which means any mechanically propelled vehicle adapted for use on roads. We know car, scooter, bike, etc. Any mechanically propelled vehicle adapted for use on roads. Next definition is driver. Driver, the term driver is mainly defined in section 2 clause 9 of the Motor Vehicle Act 1988. A person in control of the vehicle. Next is owner. Section 2 clause 30 of the Motor Vehicle Act mainly deals with owner. Owner is a person in whose name the vehicle is registered. Okay. Owner is a person in whose name the vehicle is registered. Next definition is public place. Public place is mainly discussed in section 2 clause 34 of the Act. Any place where the public has access. Okay. So these are some of the important definitions. And another some definition also we can see, which is in the next class. Okay. And we can study, now we can see a term which is no fault liability, and which is the no fault liability is one of the important term that is discussing in Motor Vehicle Act 1980. Firstly we can see the what is mean by no fault liability. The concept of no fault liability was introduced to provide quick compensation to road accident victims. It ensures that victims are compensated without the need to prove fault or negligence. Okay, so according to no fault liability, the victims, the victims, they they do not have to prove their fault or negligence. Okay, even if they does not prove their fault or negligence, according to this act, the compensation has been provided to such victims. Okay, that. The concept is, so once again, we can see the definition. The concept of no fault liability was introduced to provide quick compensation to road accident victims. To provide quick compensation to whom? To road accident victims. It ensures that victims are compensated without the need to prove fault or negligence. So its main objective to promote justice and social welfare. Under this principle, the owner or the insurer of a motor vehicle is liable to pay compensation regardless of who was at fault. Victims do not need to prove negligence of the driver or owner. So, according to no-fault liability, here the driver, the driver or the owner or the insurer, they are actually liable to pay compensation. They cannot prove the if they cannot prove the negligence of the if any of the driver of or if any of the insurer claims that it is actually the fault of the victim, he cannot he cannot claim such defense. So under this principle, the owner, so always understand this concept, that is, under this principle, the owner or the insurer of a motor vehicle is liable to pay compensation regardless of who was at fault. Victims do not need to prove negligence of the driver or owner. So, Section 140 of the Motor Vehicles Act mainly deals with no-fault liability, which is liability to pay compensation in certain cases on the principle of no fault, applicable in the case of death or permanent disablement due to motor accident. Amount of compensation rupees 50,000 in case of death and rupees 25,000, that is rupees 25,000 in case of the permanent disablement. No need to prove negligence or wrongful act. Liability is statutory and absolute, applicable only for death or permanent disability. Payment is interim. Payment is interim. Victims can claim further compensation under section 66. Okay. So here, no for liability, we saw that is the owner or the insurer of a motor vehicle is liable to pay compensation to the victim. Okay, here the victims, they do not have to prove the negligence of the driver or owner. Okay, the compensation is automatically guaranteed to them. And we have seen that section 140 of the Motor Vehicles Act 1988 mainly deals with no fault liability. No for liability mainly, we saw that only in two circumstances the no for liability is promoted, where in the case of death and in the case of permanent disability. So that an amount of compensation is rupees 50,000 in the case of death. So the minimum amount is, in the case of death, the minimum amount is 50,000, and in the case of permanent disablement, rupees 25,000. And here we saw that no need to prove negligence or wrongful act. Here the liability, always remember, the liability is statutory and absolute liability. And it is applicable, we saw, applicable only for death or permanent disability. And here another one point is the payment is interim. Payment is interim. Victims can claim further compensation under section 166 if the victims need to enhance the compensation amount. As per section 166, the victims can claim the compensation, the extra compensation. So this is the main concept of no fault liability. Okay, so now we saw Motor Vehicles Act. So Motor Vehicles Act, what is meant by Motor Vehicles Act? And now we are following Motor Vehicles Act 1988, and this particular act is mainly enacted to ensure road safety, control traffic, and to protect the rights of the road users. So we saw that, and after that we have seen some of the important definitions, that is motor vehicle, which is mainly described in section 2 clause 28 of the Motor Vehicles Act 1988. And after that we have seen the definition of driver, owner. Driver is mainly described in section 2 clause 9. Owner is mainly described in 2 clause 30. Then after that we saw public place, the definition of public place, which is mainly described in section 2 clause 34 of the Motor Vehicles Act 1980. Then we came to a concept no fault liability. Actually, what is mean by no fault liability? Always remember to provide quick compensation to road accident victims. Here, the victims, they actually do not need to prove the negligence of the driver or owner. And this concept of no-fault liability, its main objective also to promote the justice, justice and social welfare. Then after in Motor Vehicles Act 1988, Section 140 mainly deals with no-fault liability. No-fault liability means liability to pay compensation in certain cases on the principles of no fault, even if the that is the even if the driver or the owner or the insurer is liable to pay compensation to the victim, and it is actually applicable in two cases, that is death and permanent disability. So the minimum amount is 50,000 in the case of death and 25,000 in the case of permanent disablement. Here, no need to prove negligence or wrongful act. Liability is statutory and absolute, and we saw applicable is only for death or permanent disability. And here the payment is indirect. The victims can actually claim further compensation under section 166. Then the next class that we can see more definition dealing with MB Act. Okay, so today we saw Consumer Protection Act and its definition, composition, different types of consumer rights. Then composition means the Consumer Redressal Commission and its composition we saw. Then after that we have seen Motor Vehicle Act, the definition of Motor Vehicle Act, objective, and the concept of no fault liability. That's all for today. Thank you.